Hello and welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
And today on the show, we're talking about the Christchurch property market. And along for the ride, we've got local real estate agent Micky Limmer, who joins us from Bayleys. Now, you're out there, Micky, every day talking to sellers, talking to buyers.
Yes.
Tell me, how is the Christchurch property market doing right now?
Well, Ed, I think it's trending really nicely. I think when you look at Christchurch, typically it runs in 5-year cycles. And the reality is we've had 3 years of quite a flat market, and we've been seeing the market it's got a bit of pent-up frustration. And I think that's been showing through. Since about September last year, there has been some record sales, and the number of people attending open homes, making offers and attending auctions are up.
And tell me as well, I know that obviously ever since we've had the 2011 Canterbury earthquakes, the market's been in a bit of a flux. It's been up, it's been down. It did quite well initially, but we saw a lot of the population move away. What's happening to them now?
Yes. So if anybody wants to sort of track back to after the earthquakes, a lot of the professionals and, high-paying jobs, they either moved to Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, overseas, UK, USA, you name it. They took up jobs in other areas. And what we're finding now, more so than we've ever seen, is I like to say that Christchurch is now a viable option for those type of people, and we're seeing them coming back in droves. So to put a bit of a backstory to it, I recently had a couple that have just moved back from Auckland. They've sold a beautiful home up there for just under 2.2 million. I've sold them a property in St Albans, Maryvale for 1.5, and they're now debt-free. So they have sold their property up there after some tremendous growth. They've moved back, and now they can afford to send their kids to private schools, you name it.
And just give us a sense as well, Micky, what has caused them, or what's the trigger for them to be like, cool, we're going to sell out of Auckland, we're going to come back to Christchurch? What's forced that decision, or what's been the trigger that made that decision?
I just think at the stage that the city is currently at, with the development that the central city has seen, some of the tremendous attributes. We've got the Riverside Market, we've got the Strip, we have got some tremendous assets now. And not only that, I think the schooling here is tremendous. You have got, seriously, I'd say 6 world-class schools within 10 square
10 square kilometres?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, mate.
Well, we won't ask you to name them either, just
No,
because
I might miss one out, mate.
Well,
but seriously, yeah.
School number 7 wouldn't be too happy. Well, we've often talked as well in Christchurch about it being a magnet city. This was identified in the KPMG global report that came out of the UK a couple of years back that identified, even only a couple of years after the earthquake, that the city had really made a turn and that it was becoming more attractive for people to move into. Are you kind of thinking that this is really coming to fruition now with some of with the cluster of all of these things that are coming out from the great restaurants to the good schoolings? They add up to make it a really attractive or viable option, in your words.
Yeah, and I think we're a real city of convenience as well. Due to like the topography of the city, everything is sort of within reach. You're 15 minutes. There's always car parks. If you want to go to the beach, it's 15 minutes away. You want to go up the hills, 15 minutes away. You want to go to Waipara, it's 35, 40 minutes away to some of the best.
15 minutes times 2.
Yeah. I'm a real estate agent, mate. I always embellish.
And as Andrew always proves, you really can park anywhere in Christchurch.
Berms included.
And so, Micky, just walk us through as well. Are you starting to see house price movement? Are we starting to see inflation? We've often talked on this podcast that we believe that Christchurch is about 20% undervalued from its long-term proportion of the national median house price. So are we starting to see movement? I see it in the stats. I see it in Ryan's Christchurch, or Canterbury rather, increased about 4.1% over the last 12 months. But are you seeing it in the properties you're moving?
Yes, definitely. I think I read a little stat recently that Canterbury has a median sale price of $475,000. Now, obviously, that does get slightly skewed with as is where is sales, but we are the 12th most affordable city in New Zealand. And the reality is the amenities that we've got and the lifestyles that we can have here, it just makes no sense why we can't see some growth. If you were a first-time buyer looking to purchase in Christchurch with, say, $500,000, you have so many options at your disposal. You go to other major cities in New Zealand, whether that be Wellington, Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, you are seriously buying a 1 or 2 bedroom unit at best, and it's not in the sharpest of areas.
And so Micky actually came back from Wellington. He worked there for, what was it, 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
Very peaceful years for me. And Micky, what were your drivers for coming back here?
There's a couple. We built a house up there, and we had some really good success up there. But after 2 years, I always felt like it was right to give it 2 years. But after that, my wife and I had a general consensus that we could actually.
She did.
Yep, she's the boss, mate. But we did have a general consensus that we could drop our quite a large mortgage and buy something a lot more affordable here and have things like holidays, where if you have a big mortgage, let's say, in my opinion, above say 600,000 or 700,000, I don't think you can really afford to be going on nice overseas trips and spoiling your family. So for us, we thought, you know what, let's drop the big mortgage. Let's still live a very comfortable life, but not have those day-to-day pressures.
And I think as well, what's really exciting for me as an economist is when you kind of predict these sorts of things, or you start to see the trends. But when those trends or anticipated trends actually turn into stories like this of real people following the trend, moving back from the more expensive cities and saying, actually, Christchurch is really affordable at the moment. We can move there, live a better quality of life because we've got lower mortgages and
Less traffic, less Aucklanders.
We still have me down here in Christchurch, and can live that, and it's really exciting to see the trend actually turn out into real life case studies of where it happens. Yourself being an example, and all the people who turn up to these open homes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try and obviously pass that on to buyers that I'm meeting on a day-to-day basis saying, hey, like if you're buying within, very close proximity to the CBD and you're paying 500, 550, 600,000, there is no good reason why we can't see some growth over the next 3 years. And once touching on that 5-year cycle, we really should be seeing some nice growth.
And tell me as well, Micky, that 5-year cycle, where are you kind of pulling that from? That's a really interesting point.
So partnered up with Bayleys is a company called Knight Frank, and they run a valuation department. And they did a snapshot over the last 20 years in Canterbury, and this was sort of what they analysed with the Christchurch market. And obviously, with the earthquake coming in there, that did change it up a little bit. But essentially 5-year cycles, and that's what we sort of found out.
Yeah, interesting, because we certainly are predicting that we are really looking at some catch-up growth for Canterbury.
Yes.
There's no good reason why Christchurch should be cheaper than Dunedin City, in terms of house prices.
Have you been to Dunedin?
I've actually only been there once for a work trip. I anticipate just from what you're saying now that it's probably not quite as good, if I can say that. Sorry for anybody listening in Dunedin, as Christchurch in terms of its amenities, in terms of the population and the opportunities that are available as well. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really does help us get the message out to more and more people. And hey, if you want to learn more about property investment, why not check out our Instagram? Every couple of days, every second day actually, business day, we release a new carousel that gives you a bit of an update on the market, teaches you something new about property investment. We're going to link to our Instagram in the show notes, so tap or swipe over that cover art. It'll take you straight there. Or you can just find us on Instagram. We are at @opers_partners. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
And we're going to be back again tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.